Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. My name is Hilmarie Hutchison and I'm the CEO of Matrix Public Relations. Today I'm joined by my lovely co-host Shireen. Welcome Shireen. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much, Hilmarie. I'm also really looking forward to speaking to our inspiring guests today. Allow me to introduce you guys to Saahil Mehta. Saahil is an entrepreneur, an author, and a passionate mountaineer. Saahil, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Shireen. Such a pleasure to be here. Hi, Hilary. Lovely to meet you as well.
Thank you so much. We are so excited to have you on the show today. So Saahil, can you please tell our audience a little bit about you, your background and how you ended up here in the UAE?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Belgium in a quaint little town called Wilrijk just in the outskirts of Antwerp, which is the second largest city there. And, my parents are of Indian descent. I went to a British school over there, which had over 100 nationalities. So I got a real international outlook from a very young age.
Wow.
And that continued to be enhanced after I finished my education in school. When I went for university and work beyond, I ended up living in 5 countries across 3 continents, with the current destination being the UAE. And I've been here for now almost 14 years.
Excellent.
Wow. Wonderful. Okay, so Saahil, tell us, how did your journey of breaking free begin?
Wow. So it all started in the spring of 2016. So I was on a trip to, the magical island of Ibiza with 7 very dear friends. And as we were waiting at the gate at Barcelona airport, I turned to one of my friends, Vinny, and I asked him, I said, listen, Vinny, how can we make this trip special? And we both agreed that no judgment would do wonders. And we were so excited. We shared it with the rest of the team and everyone else agreed. All of a sudden, I felt this massive weight lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to pretend to be anyone that I'm not. I no longer had to impress anyone. I could just be me. And the next 4 days were absolutely euphoric. And just to give you an example, one night we were dining at a restaurant called Leo. So Leo is this amazing restaurant where they have entertainment. So they have acts during your dinner. And so our table was right next to the stage. Oh yeah, it's brilliant. And they'd have magic, dance, acrobatics, a whole bunch of things. So our table was right next to the stage. And I think it was maybe the 7th or 8th act. One of the ladies, who's a dance performer, she points at me and says, come up. And, the previous me, even though I would have loved to go up because I love to dance, just because of judgment, I probably would have shrunk back into my chair, turned the other way, or done something to avoid getting up on that stage. But This time round, because we all agreed to no judgment, I said, hey, what the heck, let's go.
Excellent.
And it was liberating. And, the rest of the trip was just filled with such amazing experiences. So I was so blown away that on my flight back to Dubai, I wanted to ensure that I note these things down while they're fresh in my memory to share it with my wife, Ekta. And as I'm writing these, journaling, if you want to call it that, tears started trickling down my face. And I'm thinking to myself, Saahil, what's going on? And I realized I couldn't recognize who I had become. I just couldn't. I've been wearing so many masks for my whole life that I didn't know who I was anymore. And the mask that I was wearing the most must be seen as Mr. Nice Guy. And as a result of that, it added what I define as a lot of clutter in my life. Now, people ask me, what's clutter? How do you define clutter? For me, clutter is nothing more than shunned confrontations. And by constantly wanting to please others, I would forget about myself. I would shun confrontations with people, with myself, with my health, physical and mental. And that's when I realized, I'm like, Saahil, this has to stop. It's time to be yourself again. You need to make yourself the number one priority. And I started to identify all this clutter that I had in my life so that I could start to break free from it.
Excellent. Now, so that was a complete transformation for you.
Absolutely. And one of the first things I did when I got back to Dubai, we did our first mountain climb in 2010, where my wife and I went a little higher than the base of Mount Everest, which was about 5,500 meters above sea level. And I loved it so much. But after that, there was always some excuse not to go, right? Work or some event. The mind is very good at making up excuses. I've learned that over the years. But I said, no, that's enough. It's been 6 years. I need to get back on the mountain. And immediately I signed up to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, the tallest mountain in Africa, at the start of 2017. And as I continued this, identifying and breaking free from the clutter in my life, people started to notice a change. They're like, Saahil, what's going on? You're more fresh. You're glowing. You seem so much more happy. So I started to share my journey. And one evening at an event, a friend of mine walks up to me, a friend named James, and he says, Saahil, the stuff you've shared with me has had such a profound impact on my life. Don't keep it to yourself. Share with more people. So I started to share with more people. Next thing I knew, I'm on stages. And then I get a call from Nairobi in Kenya saying, hey, can you please come and speak to a group of successful entrepreneurs? And, the rest, as they say, is kind of history. And, I realized that I can't be everywhere. If I want to help to spread this message of the break free framework, which I call it, to help people remove clutter in their lives and break free, I have to start sharing on platforms that everyone uses, such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And I also ended up writing a book because I realized I can't be everywhere, or not everyone has access to me. But a book is a low cost, easy, access item that anyone in the world can pick up and read. So that was a little bit of a long story, but I wanted to make sure I kind of gave the whole journey.
Fantastic.
No, it was
Excellent.
Wonderful. Yeah. Very, very interesting. And, as I mentioned, you are an author, and the whole concept of breaking free, that also I kind of derived that from your book. And the title of that is Break Free, obviously. So could you tell us about the book specifically? Was the journaling something that inspired you to write it?
If I really dig deep, I've always wanted to write a book. I never knew what I would write about, whether it would be fiction or nonfiction, but I always had it in me that one day I want to write a book. And I guess when this started to take off, even though it was never intended to share with others, this was my own personal journey. But because sharing had a positive impact on other people's lives, I said, wow, if, it felt more meaningful, right? My life felt more meaningful and purposeful. So I said, I should continue to do this. So I said, I've always wanted to write a book, and I ended up meeting a fellow author who shared his story. And then next thing I knew, I signed up with a company who helps people like myself go from idea stage to an author.
That's excellent. You did mention also decluttering. How easy is it for people to declutter, and what are the things that make it difficult for people to declutter?
So, again, it's all about mindset. The human brain, scientifically proven, once it acts in such a way to protect you, right? And this is back from the caveman period. I mean, you didn't have to see an entire saber-toothed tiger, for example. You could see a glimpse of it, and the mind would fill in the blanks, complete the picture that, yes, that's something that's dangerous, run. And so, the mind is always there to protect us. But here's the thing, we're not living in a dangerous world.
The meaning, when you talk about decluttering, it means to declutter the negative thoughts that hold us back, right?
It's not just thoughts. It's also in the physical world. It's basically getting rid of anything that no longer serves purpose in your life. Right? So it could be a thought. It could be something physical. It could be, your health. It could be toxic people. It could be a whole bunch of things. But if something doesn't serve any purpose in your life, then why are you attached to it?
Oh, that makes sense. Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that.
So we come up with all sorts of things. I mean, I know so many people that I work with and friends that I speak to. Now, whenever we go outside of our zone of comfort and you start feeling that little bit of pain, your mind is saying, no. We don't want pain. Go back. Go back to that zone of comfort. Who tell me, I had it in my head, but that was it. I mean, they didn't even take action. It's not like I tried or I did it and it didn't work out for me. it never went beyond a thought, because
Yeah,
our
like I
mind
thought
is
about
constantly
it, but
telling us.
I didn't do
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, because the
I
mind
do
is
that all the time.
Because it's so much easier to stay in our comfort zone than
Yeah.
risk something, right?
Absolutely. So that's one. Then sometimes I hear people tell me, ooh, it's interesting, but I don't have the time. Or another one that I hear frequently is, "Oof, it just sounds really difficult." So I always tell people, I'm like, look, you've killed it before even attempting it. So, it's like they always say that failure is not taking the first step. And that's why I tell people, listen, take that first step. Don't go for the biggest piece of clutter in your life. Go for something that's a low-hanging fruit and experience how amazing or how much better your life becomes when you remove that clutter. Because you know what? There's one thing that is common in all of us. Once we experience that joy, we want it again. And we're like, wow, by doing this and that, I can feel this way. I feel more free. I feel more alive. I feel more energetic, more focused. All of a sudden you're like, okay, now I've got the strength to push past that comfort zone and say, you know what? I'm just going to go through this pain because I understand no pain, no gain.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. I am wondering though, like, what are some of the tools that you would use, with your clients to help them declutter and to break free? Like, what are some of the few things you could mention to us?
Sure, absolutely. So let me share something which I feel is very relevant to the world we're living in today. Right now, there's a lot of fear, right? There's a lot of fear in the world. And people are constantly worried, right? Or worried at a much higher level than before. And I came across this concept, which I'd love to share with everyone. And that's the concept of there's absolutely no need to worry in life. Now, I'm sure you're thinking what I'm thinking, that this guy is nuts, because that's exactly what I thought.
Well, not yet. But...
No. I was just thinking, that sounds too good to be true.
So hear me out, right? Do you have a situation in life? No. That's easy, right? Then nothing to worry about. Do you have a situation in life? Yes. Can you do something about it? No. So if there's nothing you can do that's going to change the outcome of the situation, then what's the point of worrying about it?
That makes sense.
Right? And if there is something you can do about it, then get off your backside and do it. Put a plan of action in place. And all of a sudden, the worrying fizzles away. And then I've had people say, okay, Saahil, that's fine. Sounds simple, sounds great. But my problems are more complicated than that. They're not so linear and simple. And I tell them, I'm like, look, take anything. Take any situation that you have and break it down into things you can do something about and things you cannot. The things you can't do anything about, push them aside. Your worrying automatically goes down. And the remaining items, you start putting a plan of action in place. And then you're like, oh, okay, I feel this sense of relief because now I've put the wheels in motion and it's only a matter of time before all these things are no longer worries. So simple concept, but extremely, extremely powerful.
So what I'm hearing you say is you must make a decision. You either have to decide there's nothing you can do and then put it out of your mind because there's nothing you can do, or there is something I can do, and then you take action.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's nothing you can do, what benefit is worrying about it going to give you? Nothing. And if you can do something, like you said, go ahead and do it.
Excellent.
Right. The craziest thing is that it's always the simplest advice that is the most powerful, but it's also the most difficult to take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, just to share one more tool, because I feel that it's always nice to give an extra one in there, throw another one.
Yes, please.
Is be very clear on who or what is your number one priority. I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm just going to tell you the answer, right? That number one priority is you. And now some people might go, oh, Saahil, that sounds so selfish. That's so, narcissistic or something along those lines, right? But hear me out. If you are unhappy, if you're not well, if your health is bad, if you're, mentally unstable, if you're, having relationship issues, your cup is not going to be full. Your cup is going to be, either near empty or half full or whatever you want to call it. Now, if you focus on yourself and work on all these areas of your life, whether it's your well-being, whether it's relationships, whether it's the material world we live in, all of a sudden you become a much better person. Now your cup is overflowing. And guess what that means? You have a lot to give to others, to all the people that are around you that you care about. So, come back and I say, look, no, it's not selfish. It's actually selfless, because by doing this, you're benefiting everything and everyone around you.
Absolutely. And, actually, that makes me think of something that I said to a friend who'd recently gone through a breakup and, had started to feel like their self-worth had kind of deteriorated, and it was just sad. And I told them, look, nobody can love someone who doesn't love themselves. So I think that's kind of along the same lines of what you're saying of, yeah, it does sound selfish, but if you don't even like who you are and you aren't contributing to your own self-happiness, how can you do anything for anyone else?
I love that. That's so, so true. I often use a line, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect others to love you? If you don't believe in yourself, how do you expect others to believe in you? And if you don't trust yourself, how do you expect others to trust you? So I completely agree with your statement just now. Amazing.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. So we've spoken about some of the things that you have in your book. What are the benefits that you feel people can achieve after reading Break Free?
So I'll give you a few. More time to pursue your passion and priorities. Greater focus and awareness in all areas of your life. You're also going to have stronger and deeper relationships with all the people that really matter. You're going to have more energy every single day and clarity of purpose. And finally, I would say you're going to live life with love and joy rather than fear and stress. Doesn't that sound amazing?
That does
really
sound amazing and definitely benefits worth pursuing.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I can't wait to read your book because I feel like I need all of that in my life. And I'd love to help other people with that as well. So I've only recently, started to really understand the importance of, investing in yourself and these type of self-love and all that stuff that you don't really get taught in school to even consider. Those aren't the things that you're taught to focus on in life. It's all about a certain structure, certain system.
Yeah. In fact, and it's not, it's very unfortunate because in school and from a young age, it's all about comparison, right? It's how did you do in sports versus your friends or your classmates, right? How did you do in your grades versus the others? And everything in life, everyone's just always competing. But the competition that I personally enjoy the most is the competition with myself. It's how can I be a better version of myself? And nothing brings me more joy than that, because that's something that I can work towards. It's something that's in my control. I mean, some people I know, they compare themselves to, imagine me comparing myself to Usain Bolt for running. I mean, I'm going to be pathetic from every angle. I mean, so I set myself up for failure right from the start. But if I'm competing against myself and I want to be a better version of myself, wow, that just energizes me. I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah, like comparing myself to who I was last year or what I accomplished last year and trying to accomplish more this year. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and not even last year. Yesterday.
Fair enough. Okay, so how well would you say have the people around you adapted to your elevation?
Look, I'm not going to lie and say it was easy. It was a very tough journey. And especially so with my wife, because I was evolving at such a rapid pace. It got to the point where she said, Saahil, I don't recognize you anymore. You're not the man that I married. And that was like it felt like I just got punched in the face, right?
Oh, wow.
And we were actually distancing. And that got me really worried because, typical mindset. It's like, okay, stop doing what you're doing, go back to how you used to do things because, you're risking your marriage. And, there's this whole concept of a 1-degree shift where at the center of a circle, a 1-degree shift doesn't look like much, but the further you go out, that distance widens and gets further and further. And just to kind of put it in a visual, if you aim for the moon, with a rocket and you miss it by 1 degree, you miss the moon by almost twice its diameter. Okay. So that's basically what had happened. We were just started to distance. And rather than going back, because I asked myself, am I doing anything wrong? And the answer was no. So I said, I just need to improve on my communication. And I started to communicate, and we had these discussions where we wouldn't judge each other, right? We were open to say what we wanted to say because we wanted to be heard. And we went through that. And even though it was tough, over time, our relationship really started to blossom because we increased our communication. And, today, touch wood, it's brilliant. I feel so blessed to have her in my life. But there was pain, and because people don't like change. And if you're changing at a rapid pace, they're going, what's going on?
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. So it's certainly not been all plain sailing for you. And you've now shared your relationship with your wife and how that has changed. What about in other areas of your life? What has been the greatest struggle during this journey for you?
The greatest struggle, I shared this with a friend of mine earlier. I grew up in an environment where, when the parents say something, you do it, right? It was a one-way communication kind of thing.
Right.
And, especially with coupled with me wearing that mask of being Mr. Nice Guy, that, amplified it, right? I mean, I would always then do what my parents said because I always wanted to make them happy. Now, I'm not saying I don't care about their happiness. I mean, I love them. I really do care. But I was doing that by avoiding what I really wanted to say or do. And that caused a lot of conflict within me. And that affected my relationship with them. Right. So, I started to be very open and transparent with them. But rather than approach the conversation with fear or anger, because, how do you expect to get a positive outcome if you enter with a negative state of mind, right? So I approached the conversation with love, compassion, empathy, and I would be very clear on what I wanted the outcome to be, right? Because so that they understood that the purpose was to bring us closer together. And I would just have those open heart-to-heart conversations. And they weren't used to it because they were used to their son always doing what they were, he was told.
Right.
But now I spoke what was really on my mind. But again, I approached it with love, compassion, and empathy. And even though it didn't work out initially because they weren't used to this kind of behavior, again, just like with the missus, the relationship really started to blossom because it was based on truth. It was authentic. And that made a world of a difference.
That's fantastic. So this is also something maybe for parents raising children to consider and to keep in mind as they teach their children how to communicate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the key is there should be a safe space for people to say what they want to say and not what you want to hear.
Okay, I think that's a very important distinction. Sorry, Shireen, continue.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so how would you find that fine line between kids kind of crossing with saying things that they're feeling that maybe they need to rethink on how to say it, or because sometimes as a teenager you feel a certain way and you want to say these things but you hold back because you're afraid of your parents or upsetting them or something. But so what's the fine line between letting them know how you feel and being disrespectful, I guess?
So I would say two things. One, you don't want to penalize the child for speaking their mind, because if you're trying to create a safe space and then you penalize them for being honest, that kind of defeats the purpose. I just want to throw that out there before I answer the question.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but one thing that I found that works really well is having a family constitution, right? So it's something that's co-created. It's not created by the parents. It's co-created with all family members involved, where everyone agrees on the core values, on what the boundaries are, and it's then publicized in the house. So, for example, you print it out or you draw it, it depends on how artistic everyone is, but you have it on the wall, or you have something that everyone has signed or agreed to, because whenever someone goes against the core values, you bring out the family constitution and say, this is what we agreed to, not what I agreed to, we agreed to. And if someone crosses the line, you're like, look, these are the limits that we all agreed to. And we also agreed that these are the consequences when someone crosses that limit.
So
now,
it's like teaching them the law from an early age.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's very easy as a parent to order a kid around and then break the rules yourself. So if you end up breaking the rules, you have to go through with the consequences as well, so that they see that, look, it's not a different set of rules for the parents and a different set of rules for the kids. This family constitution applies to everyone, regardless of age or gender.
I love that. Excellent. That's an excellent suggestion. I hope parents will benefit from that and implement that. Very, very good. Saahil, let's change gears a bit and talk about your role as a public speaker. I noticed that you are a keynote speaker at quite a few global firms. So what are some of the main things that you speak about at these events?
So, I talk about the break free framework, but I do focus in on the points which I find are greater challenges in the workplace. So let me give you a few examples. One, a lot of people have this fear of presenting to peers or to your seniors, when you have to pitch a project internally in the company.
Right.
And so it's like, where's that fear coming from? Where's that lack of confidence? What is holding you back, right? What's that clutter that's kind of dragging you down? So that's one area that we focus on. Another area that we focus on is, if you look at where we live in Dubai, it's probably a city in the world which has the most amount of nationalities living under the same roof, if we want to call it that.
Yes.
And, that means that people from different parts of the world interpret things in different ways. So, the way I communicate to you, for example, you might find it offensive because in your culture, perhaps that's considered rude. But in my culture, that might be considered very polite or very normal. So, you can have disputes within companies, but a lot of times it's things that are unsaid, right? And then you gradually over time and through assumptions as well, relationships turn sour in companies as well.
Yes.
But by sharing the communication framework that I put together, which really, again, it's similar to the one where, we spoke about earlier with parents and children, where you create a safe space for people to communicate, you'll find that many times the intention was very different than the assumption, right? So I might have intended the best when I spoke to you, but you assumed and thought something different, which wasn't positive, and it was perhaps considering me to be a terrible human being, and that would ruin our relationship. So we focus in on that as well. And then it's also about unfortunately, even now you see that you have to be the bearer of bad news sometimes, but some people, they don't like it, they try to avoid it at all cost. So it's also about how to communicate effectively, regardless of the type of news that you have to share, whether it's positive, which is generally fairly easy, but also the negative news, which could be someone not getting a promotion, someone getting fired, someone losing out on a project that they pitched, so it's really tackling some of the key elements or challenges that people have problems with in the workplace.
Excellent. And those are very valuable concepts and learnings for companies to take on board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's change topics again. I am curious to talk about, your passion for climbing mountains. What inspired that first climb with your wife?
So, growing up in Belgium, I was very close to the Alps, and I was very fortunate that our parents would take us there pretty much every year for skiing. And I just fell in love. I didn't know what it was at the time, but every time we went on the mountains, there was just something. I don't know if it was the fresh air, whether it's, just being in a distraction-free environment. Maybe it's being close to nature, but there's something that drew me in. And, with Mount Everest being the tallest mountain in the world, I guess, for anyone who doesn't know anything about mountains, which was me back then, you dream of Mount Everest. And although I knew that, it's not a wise decision to try to summit it when you haven't summited anything else, we knew that we could at least go to the base. Now, I say at least the base, but the base itself is still, 5,200 and something meters. And we went even higher than that to about 5,500 meters. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I just love being in nature. And we call it the mountain bug. Once you get bit by the mountain bug, you just want to keep going back.
How amazing.
And so after that trip from Ibiza, when I came back, I signed up for Kilimanjaro, which is the tallest mountain in Africa. And my wife and I did that together. The following year, in 2018, we did Elbrus, which is in Russia. It's the tallest mountain in Europe. And in 2019, we did Chopicalqui, which is in Peru. It's not the tallest mountain in the country or the continent, but it was a more technical and higher mountain. It was over 6,300 meters high. And it also involved ice axes and stuff like that. So, every year we kind of take it up a notch. And then last year we were supposed to go and, climb the tallest mountain in Mexico. But due to, the global circumstances,
right,
that trip had to be put on pause.
Fantastic. You are so privileged to have been exposed to mountains and mountain climbing at such a young age that you were able to experience or build up this love for climbing. How very fortunate to have been in that position.
Absolutely. And I tell people as well, I say that, look, whether it's, even in Dubai, people say, oh, Dubai is a very modern city. It's just a lot of buildings and this and that. But there's a lot of nature in the UAE as well. We have the sea. Go out into the ocean. We have the wadis. We have, these smaller mountains, whether it's in Ras Al Khaimah or Sharjah or some of the other Emirates as well. There's so much to do. Just going out and sitting in the sand dunes and having a picnic with friends. I mean, it's just so nice to be surrounded by nature. So it exists here as well. It's not that far away. Just get in your car and go.
Absolutely. and that drive from Dubai through the mountains up to Fujairah is absolutely so beautiful to experience. It doesn't take long. It's not far to get out into nature, even in Dubai.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, it sounds like, just from what you were saying, it sounds like you go climbing about once a year, or do you go climbing more often than that? And attached with that question is, you keep mentioning and you did mention earlier that your wife also joined you on your climbs. Does she always join you, or do you sometimes go alone or with others? So
I've been so blessed that she and I shared this passion together, because it's one of those things. I mean, I when you do something spectacular in your life and you try to explain it to someone else and they nod their head and they're like, and they get it to some extent, right. But it's very difficult to explain the pure joy and sense of achievement and, kind of breaking free from the mental barriers you had in your mind, and to experience that with your life partner just amplifies it even further. So yeah, I've been very, very blessed to be able to experience all the mountains with her.
Fantastic.
I gotta ask though, what advice would you give people that struggle with sharing? Like, not everyone shares the passions of their partners. So what advice would you have for those people of maybe how they could still enjoy something together?
Well, look, we share a passion for the mountains, but there's a lot of things that we don't share a passion for, that are not in common. And a mistake that I used to make a lot in the past is I would try to convince my wife, especially when I was on this decluttering journey, I would convince her of doing the same thing because I experienced so much joy. My intention was pure. I wanted her to experience it as well. But what I learned from reading this excerpt from Khalil Gibran in The Prophet, when he talks about on marriage, is that we're two souls on our own individual journeys that just happen to intertwine a lot. When I read that, it was like this light bulb moment, right? And then I brought Ekta, to the table. And I said, sweetheart, you have to read this passage. And I said, I'm so sorry that I've been trying to force you, or not force you, but push you to do these things to bring you the same joy that I've got. But I realized that you're on your own journey and I haven't been respecting that. And just to give you one very quick example, it was a very dear friend's anniversary. And I told the missus, I said, look, I have to be there on time. Even if the rest of Dubai wants to show up late, that doesn't matter. If I'm told to be there at 8:30, I will be there at 8:30. And so, we had this agreement that we're, on two different paths and it's okay not to do everything together. So when it was time to leave, she wasn't ready. And, I told her, I said, sweetheart, I have to leave to be there on time. And, take your time getting ready. I can't wait to meet you there and see how stunning you're going to look when you get there. And I went there on my own. She came probably about 40 minutes later and we had a wonderful evening together. Now, if I rewind to my life before Khalil Gibran, I would have been looking at my watch. I would have started getting anxious. I would have probably said a few things I should have not said. She would certainly have said something back to me and probably wish that she didn't say it. We'd both have regret. We'd be upset at each other, probably look the other way in the car on the way to the event and have a terrible evening. But when we realized that we don't have to do everything together, we're not tied at the hip, our relationship started to really blossom.
That's fantastic advice. I love that story.
Yeah, that's the story of my parents. It's till this day, my mom is always taking her time and my dad is very punctual. So they always struggle with that. And I don't know if they're ever going to be able to get over it, but I'll definitely tell them this idea. It's a good idea. Yeah,
but I love what you just said. I love what you just said because I joke around my parents, my mom or my dad, depending on what the situation is, we're like, after all these years, he hasn't changed or she hasn't changed. And I said, after all these years, you're still expecting them to change.
True.
Yeah.
People don't change, right? Not that much. No.
And that adds a lot of clutter as well, right? It's acceptance versus expectations, right?
I love that. Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that personal story. So that was lovely. Thank you so much. So Saahil, you've had an incredible journey so far. Can you tell us about your plans for the future, or maybe you have plans for this year? Do you have anything exciting we can look forward to?
Absolutely. So last year, my word of the year was elevate, right? It was to elevate myself and elevate everyone around me. And for 2021, my word of the year is expand. So I've ventured into a few things, and now it's about expanding on them, right? It's not about doing more things and new things. It's about expanding what I've, and growing the plants, if you want to call it, from the seeds that I had, watered all of 2020. So one thing that I realized in a lot of my keynotes and my sharing is that people get inspired. But inspiration is great. And a few people have the discipline to do things on their own, do it yourself model. But a lot of people need that little bit of an extra nudge. They need a bit of support. They need accountability. And so for 2021, I've created a tribe on Facebook, as well as I've created a group coaching program, which allows me to work with people and in small groups or larger groups, depending on how it's set up, for many months at a time. Because I've noticed that when you say something to someone else and you've put yourself out there, now you feel, because you have this accountability partner, you feel a greater chance or a greater need to do what you said, right? And especially when you're in a small group of, let's say, 6 people together for a 6-month period, imagine if you're the only one not making progress, it's not going to feel that great. But when you have everyone else progressing and committing to what they said they were going to do, that energizes you as well. So it's all about working together as a team to grow, because sometimes on your own it's just very difficult, but when you have the support of each other, where I'm moderating the whole process, transformation is on the horizon.
Fantastic. That sounds like an excellent group, or an excellent initiative that you've put together. Fantastic.
Absolutely. I was gonna say that throughout our conversation so far, something that struck out to me is you're very well spoken, and I genuinely enjoyed listening to everything that you had to say. Have you considered maybe starting your own podcast, with your own tips and motivation speeches to the public?
So it's like the book, right? When I knew that I was going to write a book one day. I know that I will start a podcast one day. But for this year, and it's again in line with what I share in the book, is I want to be very focused. I want to be laser focused. And I know that I have a few things in the pipeline that sound super exciting, but they just have to wait. But I for sure will start a podcast one day.
Excellent. That sounds lovely.
So now we have come to an exciting segment of our show where we will each ask you a few rapid fire questions. Just like a little game show that we like to play. Are you ready?
Not expected, but yeah, let's go for it. It sounds exciting.
Okay, great. Let's see. What was one good thing that last year, 2020, brought for you?
Spending more time with family.
Lovely.
For a lot of people, actually, yeah.
Yes. Can you name one item on your bucket list?
Ooh, I would love to do a bungee jump.
Oh, wow. How exciting.
Because that scares me. That scares me so much, but I realize that I need to push through this fear. It's one of the few things that really, really, really gets the hairs on my arms to stand up,
I have the same thing on my bucket list, actually, because I'm afraid of heights. I mean, it's not extreme, but I know that, I definitely need to push myself and try that out sometime. Okay, cool. So apart from mountain climbing, as we've already discussed, what is another one of your hobbies?
I love playing tennis.
Oh, nice.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Very good. And what is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you are?
My morning routine. I have a 1 hour morning routine that I do before the rest of the house wakes up, and it's what energizes me every single day for maximum impact.
So what is your morning routine? I'm really intrigued now. It takes an hour every morning. That's intriguing.
Yeah, you're sleeping for a long time, right? Your heart rate is low, your body is a little stiff. So the first thing I do is movement, and being someone who practices yoga, I do the sun salutation every morning. After I'm done with that, to open up the body and stretch all parts, I then go into breath work. And I focus on deep breathing because, to oxygenate the whole body and bring the body alive. So I do that for, a good 10, 15 minutes. Then I go into meditation because all that breath work really puts you in a meditative state. So then I go into meditation for a good 20 odd minutes. And then I finish it off with, so the meditation is done to really balance the heart and the mind. And then I finish it off with journaling. And in my journal, I'll write 3 things that I'm grateful for, 3 things I'm excited about, a positive affirmation, my top priorities for the day so that I'm very focused and I know what must be done. And then I close it with something that I picked up from the kids, actually, from a cartoon they watch, SpongeBob SquarePants, and that I write down, today is going to be the best day ever. So once I've completed this routine of mine, I just feel amazing and I feel ready to take on anything. And it's just amazing. It's amazing because the first hour is the rudder for the day. So, it's so much better being energized versus what I was doing before, which was waking up and then kids waking up a few minutes after me. And I'm just constantly on the run, getting them ready, feeding them breakfast, dropping them to school, coming back, workout, it's just too much. It was manic. And now everything is just so much more calm and I just feel so much better.
Excellent.
It's like your little me time every day.
Absolutely. So precious. Wouldn't give it up for anything.
I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much for playing along.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. That was excellent. Now, before we wrap up, we'd like to do our green pill moment. So what green pill advice would you give to your younger self?
Without a doubt, I would say just be you. I was wearing, as I told you earlier, I was wearing so many masks that I went away from my authentic self, but just be you. I mean, even now I tell the children, I tell them, do you know why Papa loves you? And they go, why? And I say, is it because you're beautiful? No. Is it because you're intelligent? No. Is it because you're funny? No. Then why does Papa love you so much? And they'll reply, because I am me.
Wow, that's
And that's
beautiful.
so powerful. That's so powerful. And I do this with them on a regular basis because I always want them to be who they are. I mean, each and every person on this planet is such a beautiful soul. And we should, I mean, at least my personal opinion is, why change that? Just be who you are. You're amazing.
That's excellent. Excellent advice, Saahil. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your very personal and incredible journey with us. I am sure our audience will enjoy this conversation as much as we have.
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely really, really enjoyed it. So thank you. Now, before we say our goodbyes, could you share with us your maybe social media handles or where people could find you?
Sure. So on LinkedIn, it's just Saahil Mehta. If you search my name, SAAHILMEHTA. On Instagram and Facebook, it's Saahil Mehta Official. And then you can also reach me on my website, which is www.saahilmehta.com. And, for all the listeners, I have a little treat for you. There's a complimentary break-free foundation course on my website that you can take. It's a set of 5 videos that you'll get over 5 weeks that will take you through the entire framework. So, it just takes up your time, and I assure you, you're going to get a good roti. What is that, you might ask? I learned it from a very, fellow speaker and a dear friend. It's a good return on time invested.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much for that generous offer. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Saahil. Thank you again for joining us today. We so enjoyed it, and we wish you all the very best.
Can I leave you with one last tip?
Yes, please.
So the sailor, he goes to the captain and says, Captain, when are we getting our pay? And the captain says, tomorrow. So the sailor wakes up the next morning, all excited, runs up to the captain and says, Captain, can I get my pay today? And the captain replies, hey, didn't I tell you tomorrow? So you see, tomorrow never comes. There are a lot of great tools and rituals, or golden nuggets, if you want to call it, that you've picked up from this podcast. Don't wait till tomorrow. Apply it today.
Oh, good advice.
I love that. Yes, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, it was great to have you on. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Absolutely.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.